Hey, shut up. That worked. I just thought I'd try something. Can you all hear me okay? Do I need a microphone? I really don't want to have to use the microphone. Are we good? I feel like I should use the microphone because I was cheated out of the opportunity to use it during Mass, but I guess we'll just whatever. So anyway, here's a little story for you from the Gospel according to John. On the third day there was a wedding in Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the wedding. When the wine ran short, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, how does your concern affect me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servers, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for Jewish ceremonial washings, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus told them, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Draw some out now and take it to the head waiter." So they took it. And when the head waiter tasted the water that had become wine, without knowing where it came from, although the servers who had drawn the water knew, the head waiter called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves good wine first, and then when people have drunk freely, an inferior one. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this as the beginning of his signs in Cana in Galilee, and so revealed his glory, and his disciples began to believe in him. After this, he and his mother, his brothers, and his disciples went down to Capernaum and stayed there only a few days. You've heard this story before, yes? You've heard this story before, yes? Okay, I mean, you could have said no and I would have been content. I just wanted some kind of human response from you. So yeah, we've heard this story. It's the first miracle Jesus works in the Gospel according to John, and it doesn't really have a parallel in the other 3 Gospels, but if you line kind of things up anyway, it is his first miracle. It's the first thing he does, aside from that whole, taking on human flesh because he's, God. There's that. But this is the first actual miracle that he works. And there is a lot of stuff happening there that's actually really significant. And I have a lot of time to kill because Mass didn't take as long as we thought it would. So now I've got to try to explain all of this to you. So here we go. What's actually significant about it, there's a lot of things in John's Gospel, and just the way all the miracles work, like Jesus has a plan for what he's doing all of the time, right? He wasn't just randomly walking around performing miracles. When I was getting ready to get ordained, that was like the thing that I wanted to do. I was just going to randomly walk around. Once I was ordained and I could bless stuff, I was just going to walk around and bless things. Random people fighting on the street corner, just going to bless them. Like that car, going to bless that car. This guy's wearing, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to bless this. I'm just going to bless everything. I'm just going to walk around firing out blessings. Not, in fact, what the church wants you to do, and certainly not how Jesus went through his life. All of his miracles happen for a reason, and they happen on purpose, and there's a plan to how he works things out. This first miracle of his is kind of insignificant when you think about it. Okay, 6 stone water jars, each holding 20 to 30 gallons, so we're looking at, between 150 to 180 gallons of water that become wine. That's not insignificant. That is, for some winemakers, that's a pretty big year. So it's not an insignificant miracle, but compared to what he's going to do later, you made wine out of water. That's cool. Later on, you're going to heal someone that's been paralyzed. Later on, you're going to give sight to a blind person. Later on, you're going to raise somebody from the dead. If I had to pick between having somebody turn a whole lot of water into wine or raise one of my loved ones from the dead, as much as I enjoy a good glass of wine, I know which one I'm going to pick. So Jesus starts small and he works his way up to the big stuff. Because if he just walked around raising people from the dead from the very beginning, I don't know that people would be able to believe in him so much. I kind of think they would be terrified by that, right? I don't watch a lot of these stupid horror shows that are on TV. I don't really have time to watch a lot of TV. I know that zombies are apparently a thing now, that we all like. It used to be vampires. Everyone was into vampires, and then it turned into zombies, and there's better stuff on. Watch better stuff. But that's the thing. And I think if you had a person randomly walking around just raising people from the dead, that would cause people to freak out. But if they see you do a whole lot of other miracles that are progressively getting bigger and bigger, then they might be a little more okay with it. The other thing that's fascinating about how Jesus does this, it's not because Jesus is at this wedding and they have no wine and he's thirsty. He's not doing any of these miracles for himself. Almost every time Jesus does a miracle, it's because somebody asks him to do it. And what's fascinating about this miracle is that it's not the bridegroom or it's not the bride that come to him. It's not even the best man. It's none of those people. It's his mother that comes to him. And it's his mother that says, they have no wine. Notice she doesn't say, can you make water into wine for them? All she says is they have no wine. She just comes up to him and says, there's a problem here. And like any good mother, she's like giving him the opportunity. You ever hate when your mom comes up to you and like kind of tells you a thing, but doesn't tell you that she wants you to solve the problem? You just know that you have to solve the problem. Like this happened to me the other day. My mom called me up. She said, my car is due for inspection. I said, okay, that's nice. My car was due for inspection back in May. You live in Pennsylvania. This is going to happen every year. You've been getting your cars inspected for how long now, Mom? And she's like, yeah, but my car's up. Oh, I've got to do this. Okay, yeah. I don't understand why my sister doesn't get these phone calls or why my brother-in-law doesn't. I have to go. So on my one day off, it's a thing. I am the best son ever. That's basically what this boils down to. I am the best son ever. But like, you know, moms are. They don't tell you to do the thing. They just let you figure it out. That's kind of what Mary does here. She just comes up to him and says, they've got no wine. And so Jesus says, okay, fine. Like, you know, he says to her, and this would have got me slapped. Woman, what is this concern of, you know, what does this concern me? Because Jesus, again, he's got this plan. He knows when and how he wants to do things. But there's something about his mother and how when she puts a need in front of him, just like there's something about when your mom puts a need in front of you, you kind of have to respond to it. Sometimes you don't, right? Because sometimes you just don't want to. And then you feel really guilty afterwards, and it's just kind of this like whole thing. It's kind of what's happening here. And there's a reason why praying to Mary is a powerful thing. If you give her your concerns, she's just going to turn around and take them to Jesus. And he's kind of going to have to do something. Now, was she expecting him to react in this way? Probably not. I don't think anyone there, I'm surprised anyone listened to him. Because you get these big stone water jars, and they're huge, they're massive, 20 to 30 gallons, and they're for ceremonial washings. So they're kind of nasty, right? You're dipping dirty dishes in them. And the wedding feast takes a couple of days. So by the time they get to this point, these things are not beautiful. They are less than beautiful, they are kind of nasty, whatever, and they're told to fill them up with water. I don't know why they did it. I don't know if it's because Mary told them to do it, and I just imagine like a kind of feisty, short little Jewish woman, because that's what Mary was. Like, you're not going to argue with her, right? So you just do what Mary tells you. Well, she says do whatever he tells you, and so you do what her son says, and all of a sudden, the best wine they've ever had. Jesus acts in a way that they don't expect him to act. No one would do it that way. And yet something good comes out of it. So you've got that whole thing happening. There's another thing that's kind of fascinating, and like, why are there 6 stone water jars? 6 is a biblical number that signifies imperfection. Right? Creation took 7 days, not 6. So if a thing is only 6 days long, it's not quite complete. So Jesus is taking the incomplete things of this world, these things that are important and useful, and he's making them better. It's like Jesus brings a sense of completion to what he's doing. He's going to take what you have, which isn't bad. It's just not good enough. And he's going to make things better. The thing that's really fascinating about all of this, and this is kind of, I'm going to get a little technical on here. I hope I don't lose you. But when this happens, okay, and like I'm not going to read you the whole of the first chapter of John. I should, because that would kill some time. But the first chapter of John starts with this really lovely kind of prologue sort of thing. It's very poetic. It's really annoying Gentlemen, when you wind up in seminary one day, this will be your Greek final. You'll have to be able to translate this from the Greek, either from the English to the Greek or from the Greek into the English. It's a lot easier to go from the Greek to the English. You can just memorize it. If you have to go from the English to the Greek, you'll fail. Ask me how I know. En hoprotos ton logos son something. See, I can't remember it. Anyway, so you get through that whole thing, and then it starts with Jesus coming to John to be baptized. And it kind of goes through the course of a week. Jesus encounters John. Jesus gets baptized by John. Jesus is walking around on the shore, and he starts to meet some of his other disciples, and he starts to call his disciples to follow him. And once he's gathered up the right number of people, they set off on a journey, and they go to Cana. And it takes a whole week for all of this stuff to happen. So when it starts off by saying on the third day, that's after 4 days of Jesus kind of hanging out around the Jordan with John, meeting his disciples. So on the third day is really on the seventh day. So again, it's this whole idea of creation. On the seventh day of creation, God rested. But on the seventh day, this time, Jesus doesn't rest. Jesus starts to actually do more. Rather than just talk to people, rather than just call people to follow him, now Jesus works a miracle. And he starts to show people that as fascinating as I am to talk to, and as much wonderful things as I have to say to you, look what I can do. I have power over nature. I have power over things that you can't possibly comprehend. Maybe you need to really pay attention to what it is that I'm doing. And the gospel says that his disciples began to believe in him. Not that they perfectly believed in him, because it's hard to believe in something like that. I mean, it's hard to believe, even now, knowing how the story ends, sometimes it is hard for us to believe. Belief was never made to be an easy thing, but they began to believe in him. And that's all he's asking for, is the beginning of belief, the beginning of a relationship with him. If you're willing to start to put at least a little bit of the work in, he can help, he can work with that. He just wants the beginning of your belief. And he will nurture that, and he will grow that, and he will lead you to where it has to be. The greatest sin that anyone commits in John's gospel is refusing to believe in Jesus and not giving him a chance, in just excluding him altogether, and just paying attention to what it is that he says and dismissing it all immediately. You think back to what we were doing upstairs in the readings that we had. The reason why Jesus told the story that we heard in the gospel tonight is because the Pharisees refused to believe. If you've been coming to Mass every week, you've heard a whole bunch of different sermons that Jesus has been given. And after he finishes giving those sermons, the Pharisees start to laugh at him. And not just to laugh at him, and not just to laugh at the things he's talking about, but they mock him personally. You know, and they start to actually make fun of him, and they start to insult him, and they don't want to believe. And so he tells them this story because they're supposed to identify with that rich man that has all of these things given to him. They just choose not to do anything with it. This rich man had all this food and this fancy clothing and this nice house, but he couldn't love other people. These Pharisees are witnessing Jesus perform these miracles and listening to the things that he's teaching, and they already know that what's included in the law and the prophets. They just don't want to believe. That's just a terrible kind of sin, because what you're basically saying is, no, I'm good. I have everything figured out on my own. Does anyone really have anything figured out on their own? Like, seriously? I'm 42 years old and I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. I'll just be honest with you. Can you edit that out so that I don't drop the H-bomb? Yeah, the H-bomb, ooh, whatever. But like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the issue there. You know, Jesus wants, just give him a little bit of space and he can work with that, you know. The other thing that's fascinating about this, and this will be the last thing that I point out, because like I said, there's a lot happening in this story. Forget about the 4 days of Jesus walking around and meeting people and calling his disciples. Just pick up with where it starts on the third day. And if you think all the way back to Exodus and everything that's happening there, and I know you're all brilliant Old Testament scholars, but when you think about what's happening there, after Moses has led the people out of Egypt, after the plagues, after getting through the Red Sea, after all the stuff that went down on their exodus from Egypt, they finally get to Mount Sinai. And God calls to Moses and he says, here's what's going to happen. I am going to come to you and I am going to give you the law. I am going to give you the commandments that I want you and the people to follow. And if the people follow these things, then they will be my people and I will be their God and life will be really, really good. So Moses takes that back to the people and he says, this is the deal. This is the relationship God wants to have with us. Are you good? And their answer is, everything the Lord says we will do. Spoiler alert, they don't. But they're supposed to. So, okay, Moses goes back to the Lord and says, we're in. This is the kind of thing we want to do. And so they gather and they wait. And they wait for 3 days. And on the third day, the glory of the Lord descends upon the mountain. And the top of the mountain is wreathed in smoke. And there is lightning, and there are earthquakes, and there is thunder. And Moses goes up into the smoke, and the people are literally terrified. So much so that by the time it's over, they say to Moses, we don't ever want to encounter God like that again. It would be better if we were dead. That is too much for us to handle. And Moses spends a significant amount of time in this cloud communicating with God, getting the commandments, getting the law, and he comes back down and gives it to the people. On the third day this time, when God appears to his people, rather than give them a law, rather than give them commandments, rather than appear in such a way that terrifies them, he appears in a way that makes them feel happy, comfortable, at ease. He gives them a chance to celebrate. He gives them something to look forward to. And he lets them know that he wants to be with them as a person. He wants to be able to relate to them. He wants to be a part of their lives. That's the real invitation of the wedding feast of Cana, is to let God be a part of your life. Because if you can give him that small part, he can start to do greater and greater things. And as you get through this year, you're going to go through these other miracles, and you're going to see how he can really start to change things if you let him. So I suppose that's the point of this reading and really what you heard upstairs. That you have to give God at least a little bit of space to work in your life. You know you don't have it figured out anyway. Why not trust him? Why not see what it is that he wants to do with you? Why not let yourself be remade into what you were supposed to be in the first place? Why not be a saint? That's what you were made for. That's what the world needs out of you. So, consider all of that and do whatever it is you have to do in your small groups. That was long enough, wasn't it? Sure it was. Okay, good night. Thank you.